Welcome back everybody to 365 Days of Prog. Today we will be listening to Romantic Warrior by the band Return to Forever. So I'll see you all after the intro.
Hi, my name's Naomi. I'm an avid progressive rock fan, but I'm a long ways from knowing all the prog albums out there. But this year, I'm gonna give it a try. This is 365 Days of Prog.
So this album was released I think back in 1976. It's a jazz progressive album, so you'd call it like progressive jazz, unlike progressive rock. It's a really cool album. I really liked it, and I want to share with you some of the best bits that I think exist on this album, so enjoy. So I think this album is really a refreshment from the past few days. It's not that I'm saying that the past two albums, or at least, I don't know, at least three albums were bad. I just didn't really dig into them that much. I could appreciate them musically, but I just didn't have a fun time listening to them. And all of this changed with this album. This album was really fun to hear. I must say it was a very spicy album, yes. The chords, the notes, the arpeggios, everything that goes on was just so unexpected. It was really jazzy, yet it still had those prog and rock elements, which I really liked about it. So all in all, this album was a great fusion of the two, which led to something really enjoyable for me, which I'm really grateful for. Before we even get to all the single tracks on this album, I must say I just love the fact this album is basically a ton of improvised parts by all the band members that play. Each and every instrument does its part just fantastically. Everyone knows and masters their own instrument to a point which they can just improvise something that sounds so rehearsed, so well thought out, and I think that's just the beauty of this album. Now this album is called Romantic Warrior, and the cover itself also features that warrior. He's a knight. And this album leads you to believe that it's gonna sound medieval in some way, much like the Griffin album that we've heard, or some other albums that exist that tend to do what the era they're trying to represent is. But this album, I find, is not really doing such a thing. Although it represents the medieval era, I don't think it sounds at all like that, and I don't even think it tries that much. The overall feeling is very jazzy. It could be a very modern album if I were to say, and I think the gist of the medieval era is nice, but it's not really that related. So I wouldn't be going on each and every track in this review, just because some of them, or most of them I should say, they really kind of sound the same. They have the same idea to them. There's a beautiful piece of jazzy music, and there's a lot of improvisation. There's a few licks, there's a few chord progressions. They're all very spicy and interesting. But all in all, I wouldn't say that I could differentiate between two different songs in this album all that well, at least not with my lack of acquaintance with the album right now. That is to say, my favorite track on this album has to be the title track, The Romantic Warrior. There are a few reasons for why it's my favorite track, although most of them sound quite the same. Something about this track just resonated with me on a different level. Now, going and actually researching about this album after I've heard it, I absolutely understood why I loved it so much and why I like the unique sound it holds. The fact is, this track is purely acoustic, okay? So, for those of you who don't know what that means, it means that nothing is synthesized or made electronically, which means there's no actual synthesizers or like organs, at least not, you know, the electric organs, as well as there are no electric guitars. So this track is basically all acoustic, and I really liked it because they used the heavy bass sound using a double bass, which is an instrument almost never seen in prog rock, and I suppose that progressive jazz does have quite a bit of it because it is a jazz instrument. And at the same time, there's a piano, which is also pretty amazing because it's just the raw sound, as well as the guitar and the percussions are also acoustic. And I really like the way that track just does everything. I enjoyed it highly, and it is one of my favorite songs I've heard on this series so far. So this album is an instrumental masterpiece. I love when albums just go all the way with the instruments. They just tend their focus to that. They don't look at the singing, no lyrics, no nothing, just instrumentation. I think it's beautiful, and this album just hit all the right spots with me, and I liked it ever so much. Now, as usual, what I think of the cover does mean a lot because the cover represents the album at first sight. And this cover, I think, does a great and not so great job at representing this album. Seeing the cover, it's really beautifully drawn. I think it has a very unique aesthetic. It looks fairly realistic, but yet again, it looks like a drawing. Now, as I said earlier, I think this album really tries and sells itself as a medieval inspired album, and I just don't think that's the thing. I like the fact that they chose that as the concept, but I don't feel any medievalish, if that's even a word, inspiration on this album. All in all, this cover is pretty aesthetically pleasing, and I think more covers like this would be highly appreciated. Now, as for that, my rating for this album would be an 8 out of 10. I know I said it's a great album, but still there's a lot more to be desired. I think if some parts were better thought out, I think they could be more catchy and hook better, and I think that's the place where this album goes down to an 8. But at the same time, an 8 is a great score, and I think an album should always be an 8 if not more, and I'd probably listen to it because it's good. So, stay tuned for tomorrow's episode. We'll be listening to a very good album. I'm already saying that in advance because I've listened to it and I know it's good. So, we're going to be listening to Illusions on a Double Dimple by Triumvirat. Yes, that band. Yeah, you know it. No, you don't. Check in for tomorrow. It's going to be a blast. And that's about it, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye, guys.